Thank you very much, David. I appreciate the introduction. And yeah, I'm going to talk about iOS 9.3 for iPads and iPhones, and hopefully we'll get through it within the 50 minutes time. So iOS 9 came out and it brought in a lot of different changes to iPads and iPhones. And of course, I'm going to talk about a selected few of those changes. If I was to talk about all three, we wouldn't be here for 50 minutes. We might be here for 3 days. There was also a 9.3.1 that came out, and I'll explain why and what went on with that. And of course, with every iOS change that Apple puts out, they always have some improvements that are in the background, such as making the battery last longer, some security checks, iBooks and iClouds changes. Now, there is a list of devices that are supported by iOS 9.3, and that list is my last slide in this presentation. And if you have a device that is normally running iOS 8, it should take iOS 9.3. And some of the features that I'm going to talk about today and some of the features that came out in the change are not available in all countries around the world, but you can certainly go to that website shown on this slide 3 and find out what features are available in what parts of the country or world and in what languages. When Apple came out with iOS 9.3, they covered 21 different devices that they have online right now. And that's the largest number of devices that they have covered in the past when they come out with a change. There are some limited support items on iPad 2, iPhone 4S, and the mini iPad first generation, and iPod Touch on the 5th. And we'll get into what those limitations are later. So how do you get an iOS update? Well, obviously you have to be connected to the internet on your device, and then you want to go to Settings and open the Settings app and tap General, and then tap Software Update. And when you tap Software Update, your device should go off and start looking for what iOS update you have on your device and what's available on the internet. And it'll check for you, and then it'll tell you, yes, you have the current software, or you need an update. And then you have to tap Download and Install. And when that's done, you will be asked to accept the end user's license agreement. And normally you're asked to do that twice. And after you accept, then you can go ahead and do the download and the install. I caution you, when doing any kind of iOS update on any device, that should be plugged in to the charge, i.e. the wall socket on the in the house and into your device. Reason being is, if you try to do an iOS update and some of them take up to 20 minutes to accomplish, and you have run out of battery power during that iOS update, you may have a real problem with your device. So make sure you got a full charge or you're plugged in to the wall and charging. It was released in March of this year. And some of the important things that I'm going to cover will be Wi-Fi calling, improvements in the News app, how Notes has different capabilities and features now, what multitasking is all about on your device, and then some quickies on speed, battery life, security, iBooks, and iClouds. There's lots of features, as I've said before. And if you want to find out what kind of device you have, because that's not a piece of information we carry around in our hip pocket all the time. You can go to that website there, and the iOS device specification grid will come up, and you can figure out where you sit in the big picture. iOS 9.3 was released, and when they did it, there was a activation bug in the original release. Not with all devices, but some devices had problems in trying to do the 9.3 update, and they locked up. So the device was in some kind of lockup. And wow. So Apple realized this after they put out the update, and they came out with a new build. And how do you tell which build you have on your device? Well, again, if you go to settings, you go to general, and you go to about, A-B-O-U-T, about, and scroll down to see what version iOS you have. You'll have an iOS number like 9.3, and then after it, you'll have a parentheses, just like you see right here, and it'll give you the build number. And the build number is what's important, because they have separate builds out for separate problems. Sometimes, in some cases, you are forced to do a device firmware update. And if that's necessary, then you will get specific instructions on how to do that. iOS 9.3.1 was released a month later, or 10 days later, I should say. And this is where they found another problem about activation and bricking. Now, Apple wanted to be very careful about this bricking issue. So again, 9.3.1 came out, and it got you over the issue of sometimes your whole operating system would crash or hang up. Sometimes when you tapped a link, it wouldn't perform. Sometimes you had an address activation problem. And if you went off and had your device, especially a device that was with Touch ID capabilities, repaired at a repair shop not authorized by Apple, you might get an error 53, and also you would have a brick instead of a device. And then Apple came out and they said, well, oh gee, we were really just trying to protect the customer's data stored on the device, and so if some unauthorized repairman went in and repaired a device, we wanted to make sure malicious components and unauthorized repairs would not make your data available to the outside world. But then they put out 9.3.1 to get around that. So the Error 53 can now be used, and there is no bricking of your device. Bricking of your device meaning you can't use it anymore. You have to take it to an Apple store. So that was a little bit embarrassing for them, but that was the main reason for the iOS 9.3.1 update. No more Error 53s. And sometimes, if you had an Error 53, you could successfully restore your device on iTunes using a Mac or a PC, but again, Apple said, gee, this didn't work out the way we wanted it to. We've got some lawsuits against us for this, so guess what? We apologize. And, oh, by the way, if you had this problem and you had an out-of-warranty replacement, then you can contact Apple and get your money back if you can prove what you've gone through. Again, the reference for all of this is on supportapple.com. if you want to check it out. So what changes did we have in apps that came out with iOS 9.3? I'm going to cover these in detail: Wi-Fi calling, news, notes, and multitasking. Let's start with Wi-Fi calling. Neat thing. I happen to be an Apple iPad, iPhone user. My support carrier is Verizon, and now I can place a phone call using my Wi-Fi connection instead of my data link from the cell tower. And I can also do it on more than one device. So you need a iPhone 5 Charlie or later, and not all carriers support this. I know Verizon and AT&T do. I don't know about the others. Again, the reference at the bottom of this slide 13, if you go there, they will tell you exactly around the world which carriers support this Wi-Fi calling feature. And if you have Wi-Fi calling, what you're going to see looking at the bottom of this slide is you'll see an indication on your status bar at the top of your phone saying AT&T Wi-Fi is available. And it's not turned on by default, meaning you have to go in and set up your device to use Wi-Fi calling. So you go to settings, you go to phone, and if Wi-Fi calling shows up, then your carrier supports it, and you can enable it, activate it on your device. The federal government got into this because if you do Wi-Fi calling using your iPhone or your iPad, then the emergency services address will not be there. And so you have to take care of that. You have to make sure that if you're using that and you're in an emergency, you give the people the proper information. Check out Smart 911. If you have Smart 911 in your area where you live, then this can also help the people who receive the 911 call find out who you are, where you are, what kind of medications you have, that kind of stuff. I have Smart 911 in my county here in Florida. So you can make and receive Wi-Fi calls from another device also. But again, that device, the second device that you hook up to, like your iPad, along with your iPhone, it has to have 9.3 iOS on it, and you have to go into both devices and set it up. You have to use the same Apple ID between both devices. And if you're using both devices to make a phone call, they both have to be on the same Wi-Fi network. Here are the steps on how you place a Wi-Fi call from your iPad, iTouch, Apple Watch. Once it's set up, then you go through these steps and you can make those phone calls using the internet instead of the tower, the cell tower. If you are on an iPad or iTouch and you have Wi-Fi calling on your iPhone already set up, then these are the steps that you would do in order to connect that second device to Wi-Fi calling. And you need a 6-digit, and it's sort of like Bluetoothing. Here's a sample display of the phone and the setup. Over on the left-hand side, this is what you get when you do allow calls from other devices. So you're on phone, calls from other devices, and this is the page and what it looks like. So you turn on the other devices that you want to use on the phone also. Notice its phone is hooked up, on the left-hand side, and he turned on work, his Mac, turned on his iPod and his iPad. Once you do that, the next setting you get is on the right-hand side, and you have to supply this information. Is my Wi-Fi calling on? Call set of devices is on, respond, call forwarding, etc. Just an example. If you try to get Wi-Fi calling on your device and it doesn't work, then there's 3 or 4 things that you can do to look at the setup and see if it's in fact been made correctly. So you follow these steps, but don't try to go through them too quickly. Once you go through the steps, you have to wait a little time for the adjustments to take effect. Go to settings, phone, and make sure that Wi-Fi calling is on. Restart your phone. Now, when we say restart your phone, we don't mean put it to sleep and then wake it up again. Restart your phone means turn it off and then turn it back on. And make sure that you connect to a Wi-Fi network, and be aware of the fact that all Wi-Fi networks do not support Wi-Fi calling. Go to General Settings, General, Reset, and tap the Reset Network Settings. Sometimes your network settings on your phone are hung up, and if you reset them, you reconnect, and then that fixes the problem. And again, with Wi-Fi calling, FaceTime isn't available in all countries or regions. News app. Prior to 9.3, I wasn't using the News app myself, but yes, there's an app on your phone called News, and it's becoming very predictive now based on your habits. If you use the News app, it collects data about what are you doing. And now with 9.3, news comes from all sources, not just the select few that Apple had prior to that. So now you can get news from any kind of source that is in fact already on the internet, okay? And there's some changes so that you can get different displays when you're looking at news. And it now supports RSS feeds from Safari. RSS, real simple syndication, or rich summary, rich site summary. But basically RSS is a continuation updating of a certain item that you've joined with RSS so that you can see in real time what's happening to that information as it updates frequently. Okay, the News app also will create a favorites list for you. It's increased in its speed almost double, and it keeps your data separate from your Apple ID, so you're not tied, those two things aren't tied together, and that gives you better security. I check the news on a frequent basis on my iPad so that I can stay up with what's happening in the world of Apple and Microsoft. When you go and use the new News app, you see when you bring it up, it says articles for you. And of course, again, that's a wee bit of tracking. What do you normally look at in the news? And we're going to bring it up for you because we know this is what you like. If you have a video, you can play the video as you're looking at the News app. Okay. If you're on your iPhone and you're using a News app, it's better to put it in the landscape mode so that you can see everything that's going on instead of in the portrait mode, i.e. horizontal instead of vertical. And again, news is only available in the US, UK, and Australia, i.e. not everywhere in the world. And checking updates on the news is better with the news app, the new news app. And this is what it looks like. If you turn your mini iPad, which I have, horizontal, you can see more stuff going on versus vertical. The Notes app. I use the Notes app a lot. It used to be when I got ready to go shopping, I would take a list, make a list on a piece of paper, and then I went and got in my truck and went shopping and left the piece of paper at home. Duh. So I use Notes. Now when I go shopping, I make a list in Notes on my phone. I set it up so I can make a list, and as I buy the items, I can check them off my list, and that's what works for me. I also keep my medical information when I need to take my pills and when I need to refill them in Notes. And now, of course, we can take those notes and we can lock them so that nobody can see them unless they know what the password is to unlock the note. So here's how you lock a note. You open the Notes app, you compose a new note, you tap the share button, which I show an example of what the share button is in this situation. And then if it's the first time, you're going to be asked for a password and its corresponding hint, so that when the hint comes up, because you've forgotten it, you can still get into your note, and then off you go. If you have a device that has Touch ID, you can even use Touch ID to enable looking at a locked note. I have Touch ID on both my iPad Mini 4 and my iPhone 6 Plus, and I like the Touch ID concept. It makes it a whole lot easier. And when you touch the share button on your phone, as an example, this is where you'll see the lock note thingy, and you touch that and it locks the note under that password that you put in the first time. Now, if you got a hint for your password, I wouldn't say my password is password. A little joke there, sorry. Another feature that I really like that they came out with and improved significantly in 9.3 was multitasking. And it comes with the devices you see listed there. And what's really nice about it is that you can have multiple things going on your pad at the same time. So you can do a slide out to a third, or you can do a slide out to a 50-50. And I'm going to show you some screens on that in a second. And anytime you do a slide out with either a third or a 50-50, both of the apps that you are using in that split display are active. And so you can use them both. But again, this is limited to the iPad. It does not work on an iPhone. This is a 1/3 slide out. And the slide that you use to slide it out is you start over here by off screen and slide this way. There's a little button for it, and you get a 1/3 slide out. And then if you want to change what app appears here, you start from the top down, and you can change the app. So what that really means is you can have email over here and something else going on over here. Not all apps work on slide out, but most of the apps that are supplied by Apple will in fact work on the multitasking. And here's what a 50-50 multitasking looks like. This is really cool when you want to do two things at the same time. This is not my example. I took this shot off the internet, but again, all I did then was I had a map app going on over here, and I had something on the internet going on over here, and from the word 1/3 position, I just drew my finger across to this position and gave it a split view. Really simple to use. Play with it. I think you'll learn the same thing I learned. It's neat. It's really cool. I've used it numerous times when I'm trying to do two things at once. Multitasking also allows you to play videos or stream FaceTime while you're doing something else. All you have to do is tap the home button and it puts the video in a corner. And you can change where the video display is. You can move it around on your iPad surface. It may not work with some YouTube app. It may not work with some other browser if you're using something other than Safari. And this is an example. Here I am in email. I'm reading email and watching some kind of video on the side. And again, you can take your finger and put it on the video and move it around on any one of the four corners of your iPad. Other improvements have come up. The biggest one, as far as I'm concerned, was battery. And we're going to take a couple of minutes to talk about this because a lot of people have problems with their battery running down quickly and they're losing power. So what do? Well, for the iPhone, they made it a lot easier, and they have a thing called low power mode now. And low power mode throttles down some apps and some other actions that may be happening on your iPhone, or when you get to the 20 or 10% battery. If you don't have low power already turned on, it'll prompt you to go to the low power mode. And you can go to the low power mode by going to settings. We'll get into that in a second. If you're in settings, you want to touch battery. And it's a couple spaces down from general. So you go to settings and then you touch battery. Once you touch battery, you get this kind of display. And again, you can tell whether or not the low power mode is on or off and whether the battery percentage is on or off. The battery percentage is that number that shows up in front of your battery telling you how much of a charge you have left on it. And if you are in the low power mode, then your battery display, instead of being black like this one down here, will in fact be orange or yellow, whichever color you want to call that. Let's go take a look at it also. Under battery percentage, you will find your battery usage. And your battery usage is broke down into what app do you have on your device that's using the most battery time. And as we can see here, Tweetbot, Slack, Safari, etc., etc., etc. Now, you can check for the last 24 hours or last 7 days, last 4 days. This number varies depending on when's the last time you checked this. If you tap this little clock here, then what's added is your background information. Notice my mail over here, it says it has background activity, but I don't know how much. And when I check mail over here, it says I had 10 minutes of mail on the screen, and I had 30 minutes of mail in the background. Now, you can alter that by going into the mail routine and going from push to fetch, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is, how do I know what app is using how much of my battery and what can I do to make that happen? And let's go to battery, touch the little clock up here, see the background information along with the normal information. It's really neat. If you turn on low power mode, you should get an extra 4 or 5 hours of battery use beyond what you're normally getting for a 24-hour period. And Apple has come out and improved some of their apps and their operating system so that the battery doesn't discharge quite so quickly because they've done improvements. Where are your power hogs? Well, the biggest one usually is your brightness of your screen. Apple improved security as far as having a passcode. When you first open up your device, iPad, iPhone, iPod, and you have to put in a couple digits, like 4 or 6 or something else to actually get to your home screen, that's called a passcode. And if you don't have a passcode, you're taking a big chance on somebody seeing the data on your device without your knowledge. And that's not what Apple would subscribe to. So they changed the 4-digit passcode to a 6-digit one if you're just using digits, or you can even get into your iDevice and change it from digits to letters, numbers, combination, whatever. And of course, going from 4 to 6 digits improved it from 10,000 different combinations to 1 million different combinations. And so that's better security. Most of your devices can be set up to, if somebody tries to enter the passcode 10 times unsuccessfully, then it's locked out. And even your device can be completely erased. Two-factor authentication is coming, and it will only be on devices that you trust. And a number will be used to receive verification codes that will be sent to you as a text or as a phone call. So you need to provide 2 pieces of information. First, your password, and then your 6-digit verification code. A verification code is a temporary code that is sent to you as a text message or on the telephone as a recorded message, and you use it when you want to sign in on your device. Sometimes we see verification codes when we want to reset our password. They send you a verification code because they're trying to make sure that whoever's doing the changes here is in fact the owner of the device. I remember my Apple ID password because I have it on the back of my iPhone and on the back of my iPad. Now, do I have my ID password on there? No, I have a hint to my ID password. And so if you was to pick up my phone and turn it over on the back and see what's there and try to get into my or my ID password using what's on the back of my phone, it wouldn't work because that's my hint on the back, but it reminds me of what I have to enter. And of course, keeping your trusted devices physically secure means, you know, don't leave your phone laying around to where somebody else can pick it up. Be careful when you're in large crowds because people will come up and swipe your phone right off your waist. When I'm out in public with my phone hooked to my little pouch on my side, I keep my shirt over it so it's not obvious that I got a phone hanging there. Keep your trusted number up to date. This is a number that they will send a verification code to. That's your trusted number. And sometimes if you let that go and it's not updated, when they try to send you a verification code, you don't receive it. If you want two-factor authentication, then you go to iCloud. And when you open up iCloud, you see your name and your email address there. You tap that. Then you have to enter your Apple ID because I want to make sure it's you. And then you tap password and security. And then you tap set up two-factor authentication. And then you go through the steps and follow along. You can do this with an iPhone, an iPad, an iTouch. You can do it with an Apple Watch. And you can also do it on Windows PC with iCloud on it. So two-factor authentication displays look like this on your iPhone. They're very careful about this, and there has to be some kind of verification. They're not going to go through a two-factor authentication unless you have a trusted verification. And that's what the second display is all about. So even to set it up, they're going to send you a code to the number that you specify over here, and you have to put that number in here to verify. Now, do you want it as a text message or do you want it as a phone call? It doesn't matter. But whatever number you put in here, they're going to send you a verification code that you enter here. And then you'll have two-factor authentication set up. Apple considers that they have 4 levels of system security. And the reason that iPads and iPhones are more secure than Android devices is simply because of the way Apple handles their security. The most important one is number 3 down there, app security. If you own an Apple device and you want an app, unless you jailbreak the device, you're only going to get the app from the Apple App Store. And that app has been thoroughly checked out so that it is secure for you and it doesn't compromise the operating system's integrity. Apple does that before they allow apps into their store. Some people who make apps don't want to go through all the hoops that Apple wants them to go through, so their app isn't in the Apple Store. But the apps that are there have been thoroughly checked out. Network security, encryption and data protection, and system security are all important also. Again, if you don't use a passcode on your device, and passcodes are a pain, I realize that. I have 2 devices. Every time I light them off, I got to go through a Touch ID or passcode. And so the Touch ID thing is becoming more popular because then you don't have to enter any digits. You can just use your fingerprint to open up your device. And that's my next subject, Touch ID and passcodes. Again, they've been approved with 9.3. And since I have Touch ID, I can go to the App Store and then use my fingerprint to buy something out of the App Store. I don't have to enter my passcode or my Apple ID. But again, to be safe, the passcode is required under those following conditions. You have turned your device off and you just turn it back on. You can't use your fingerprint Touch ID. You have to go in with the passcode. Your device has been unlocked for more than 48 hours. the device has received a remote lock command. Again, you have to put in the passcode. If you try to unlock your device with a Touch ID 5 different times and it doesn't work, then you're going to have to put in your passcode. And of course, if you're going to set up new fingers with the Touch ID, then you have to put in your passcode. Getting back on this subject for just a second. If you have Touch ID capabilities on your device, and most of the new ones are coming out with Touch ID capabilities, then you can have up to 5 different fingerprints on that device that will open it up. So that's something to consider too when using Touch ID. iBooks. Hooray, hooray. Apple finally saw the light, and now they will let you take a PDF document, portable document, format document, and put it in iCloud. And it will sync up with all your devices. So if somebody sends you a PDF, such as a user's manual, you can save it in iBooks. And then you can look at it on your device. Also, audiobooks. Support for audiobooks that have been purchased previously. You can do them on the iStore, or you bought it from the iStore, and you can bring them up in iBooks. You can share audiobooks purchased with 6 people. And of course, now iBooks will support multi-touch books, i.e. multi-touch being I can touch something while I'm looking at that book and it changes from landscape, or not landscape, it changes from satellite view to road view, as an example. Or it becomes 3D and I can see depth in the multi-touch book. You have new controls so that you can move quickly through the book that you're reading and enlarge the text easily. Apple added an Apple Pencil, which is really, really neat if you have an iPad Pro. And what's really neat about it is this Apple Pencil can do a lot of things with you being an artist and using your iPad so that you can make some really nice drawings. But again, PDF files and other previously unsupported file types can be synced across all your devices, iPad to iPhone to iPod. And when you first download 9.3, you're greeted with the option to enable this feature, but if you didn't enable it when you first downloaded 9.3, all you do is go into iBooks and you can enable it at any time after. Another nice thing about iBooks is if you buy a book from the store and they come out with an update to that book, you get the update for free. And they let you know that there's an update out there. Would you like to download it? And it automatically replaces the old copy of that book with the new copy. A lot of people don't realize that user manuals for your devices are in the iBooks store and they're free. When they come out with an update, you get it free. On all of my iDevices, I have the iBooks user's manual. Sometimes I even have to refer to it to find out what's happening. That's my iced tea break. Okay. iCloud improvements.
Yep, Jerry, we got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I got it. This fixes issues on iCloud backups. There was some incomplete data being stored after you did some health data apps, so that's been cleaned up. Sync for iBooks and PDFs is part of the iCloud update, and storage. When you're getting close to the filling up your storage with iCloud, they're now going to let you know. That's what we mean by proactive status information. So if you're only getting 5 gigabytes for free and you haven't paid $1 a month to get 50 gigabytes, they're going to let you know. If you paid for 50 gigabytes and you start to fill it up, they're going to let you know. You're getting close to your fill up. Nice. Of course, now two-factor authentication is available on all iCloud accounts and with managed IDs. Now, what do we mean by support for managed IDs? A managed ID belongs to an institution like a school, okay? And so managed IDs are controlled by the institution itself. Or if you go to work for a company and they give everybody an iPad. In Lake County, Florida, where I live, the whole educational system is now BYOD, bring your own device. And if you don't have a device, the Lake County school system gives you one. So they have managed IDs. They can reset passwords, they can limit purchasing and communications. They can say you can't go to these different websites. So it's a network control to a managed ID program. Previously, before 9.3, you couldn't sync a lot of this stuff up. So now 9.3 gives you the ability to do that. I think that's great. If you want to send a PDF to the cloud, all right, you open up your iBooks app. You'll be asked if you want to use iCloud. You tap on Use iCloud, and then your PDF will automatically begin uploading to the cloud. Now, why would you want a PDF in the cloud? Well, you know, iDevices have limited storage, depending on whether you bought 16, 32, 64, or 128. And so I keep a lot of stuff in the cloud and not on my device. And as long as I can get to the internet, I can pull it out of the cloud and use it. Sometimes when I go out to make a presentation, I pull it up from the cloud instead of taking it with me. This is what iCloud for iBooks will look like when you open the page. And if you're not sure what you're doing, then click on the Learn More. But now you can access your entire library. That's a big improvement for iCloud. There seems to be some mystic about iCloud and what it really does. It's storage someplace else and not on your device. That's a simple explanation. And that storage for Apple is rather secure. I trust it. All right, I said at the beginning of this presentation that, in fact, we had some supported devices, and here you can see a list of them. Where you see the asterisk, we have limited support for some features. But I have a iPad Mini 4, and I have a 6S Plus phone, and so I'm in pretty good shape. When I started this presentation, David, I started a timer, and it says I got 2 minutes and 51 seconds left, but I'm going to let it go. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate everybody being here today. I want to say before I leave, use your device and have a wonderful Mother's Day tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. Jerry, I certainly do appreciate that 2.5 minutes. We can do a lot. As I said, if Jerry will hang around, we can ask a couple questions. If not, submit your questions to email form, and Jerry would more than happy to get back to you on this. As I said, you've got his email there to shoot him an email anytime you want. I know that if you're down in the Florida area, you hear from him all the time. And as I said, he's a frequent presenter if you're interested in having him talk about all sorts of topics, check out the speakers page on the website. He's quite an exciting speaker, and I think one of the few people I know that has a deeper voice than I do.